I guess it finally occurred to me last night as I was uploading the videos for the removal of the differential. This bracket that holds the strut rods is only connected by 4 bolts. If I had taken that off, I would have had a better swing at the nuts holding the U-bolts that hold on the half shafts. So I cost myself some time and effort. I'll probably post this in 2 places, probably at the beginning of the trailing arm removal, because that's where I am right now, and hopefully I can connect it somehow in the video for the removal of the differential. So now we're going to address the trailing arms. There's still a couple things attached to the trailing arms. There's some brake lines, and then there's the emergency brake cable. So we're going to have to take those off first. We've talked about before, these are held on with those clips, and once you move the clips, and by these I'm talking about the brake lines, it's the flexible line that can move with the trailing arm. Okay, that clip broke. Well, maybe it was already broke. Anyways, once you move that clip, this just comes out. And again, you have another clip like that on the other end where you're now, okay, I think I need to, before I do that, I believe I need to take off the brake line. It's an 11/16. So I believe that was a 5/8 I had in my hand. It was. So I need an open end or a brake line. Wrench. So I will get both of those. Bring some others just in case. Let's try the flat nut fitting first. Loose. The 5/8 side of it. Okay, the 5/8 actually fits. broken loose. I just didn't want to go on it, but the flare nut wrench did. That's kind of weird. So, brake line is off. Now we need to somehow pry off that retainer if I'm not in the way. Doesn't want to come. Let's see, we're going to have to buy some new ones of these. It's coming. And once we get that clip off, the fitting that separates the two back brake lines from the main one coming in just goes through. Hopefully you can see that hole has two flats on it, and that fitting goes in there and it won't turn, and that's how you can tighten the brake lines in and break them loose. So after that, there's a emergency brake cable, which appears to be able to be pulled, and so it doesn't appear like it's stuck. So I'm going to take off the brackets that hold it to give myself some play, so that I can take it off. Those are 1/2 inch self-tapping screws. Make sure you have it on removed, because the last time I had it on tighten and they were just spinning. Okay, those are off. Now there will be a clip on that back side here, one of those Mickey Mouse ear clips. And I will move the camera so that we get a shot of that on one of the sides. Probably just do the passenger side, even though I'm working on the driver's side, just to show you how it's in there. Because I don't want to carry the camera all the way around the front of the car, or front of the frame, I should say. It's no longer a car. Just to get that picture, because once I pull it off, it might be back on the inside doing the work. Or maybe not. Maybe it is worth taking it around. So right there is the Mickey Mouse ear clip. We'll pull that off. And we've got to get this far enough that we can pull the cable out from there. And then on the back side, which I guess I'll take it around and show you from the other side. So that right there is where it attaches to the parking brake. It's on another bracket that the cable's got a ball on the end of it, and there's a slot in the bracket, so in theory we can pull that forward and slip it through that slot in the bracket, and it will be disconnected from the parking brake cable. So let's see how that goes. Pulling it forward, and I don't have enough light here to see what I'm doing. Okay, so that's pulled forward, and it has to go toward the back to get out of there. Hopefully you saw that. And now the cable coming completely off. So I will do that on the other side. And unless there's something worth showing, I'm not going to video that side, because I noticed that my time left on this battery was down to 8 minutes when I started that clip, so and quite frankly, I'm getting pretty tired. So hopefully you were able to see that. But last time I fought with that because I didn't disconnect all that other stuff from the parking brake cable first. So it was a lesson I learned from a comment from somebody on my videos that I have for the 74. And I don't remember the gentleman's name, but I appreciate it, whoever you are. I'm going to try again to video the removal of that brake cable, because I'm not sure that I got it on the video before when I did the driver's side. So, I can find my pliers now. There's a ball here, and you just need to put some slack in the line and push it through the slot there, and it comes right out. So that's that. And good, there was enough juice in it to record it. Okay, the trailing arms are next. They're held on by this bolt nut right here. And inside this trailing arm there is a bushing that would be functionally similar to this one from the strut rod, okay? The bolt goes through it, and on either side of that are the shims that affect your alignment. So when I did this job on my 74, the first thing I did was take out this cotter pin here, and I removed the shims. Well, yesterday I noticed that even with this tight, there's some play in that that trailing arm, and it's because of the rubber bushing that's in there. Okay, and the thought I had was that by removing the shims, when I was trying to pound on that bolt, the rubber bushing was giving, so I wasn't getting the full force of the impact on that bolt, and it took me a long time to get that out. So I'm going to try a different approach on this one. I am going to leave the shims in, and hopefully they will brace up against this, and between that pocket where the trailing arm is connected. Let me move that light, it's a little too much glare. So there would be shims that would be tightly fit up against the pocket there, and when I hit the bolt, instead of the rubber giving, those shims will rest on the flange of the metal insert in the bushing, and hopefully it will allow more force to be generated to push the bolt and free the bolt from the inside of that metal part of the bushing. I hope that makes sense. And then once I get the bolt out, I will just go ahead and then I'll take out the cotter pin and take out the alignment shims. Okay, so again, it has a cotter pin that looks like it's so rusty it's not really going to do much. So I'm going to try to dig that out, get as much of it out as I can, and then as I did on the bolts that were holding the differential bracket yesterday, I'll try to just use the impact wrench on that, see if I can just break off that the cotter pin. Now, I am likely to just buy a set of new bolts and stainless steel shims to put in here. So really I'm just trying to see if I can get it off without destroying the bolt. So one of the first things I'm going to do, and I'll do it off camera, is I'm going to move the bridge jack, and I'm going to prop these trailing arms up with the bridge jack so that they're not flopping around as I'm trying to work. Okay, I've hit that nut with blaster. There's a little interference from a piece of the cotter pin from putting the socket all the way on. So, like I did yesterday and pounded on a little bit. I am not going to hold the back end with a wrench just yet, because if it spins and it spins inside the metal part of that bushing, that actually would be a good thing. It did not spin at all. So time to get out the impact hammer with the hammerhead insert, which happens to be right on the toolbox right behind me. So we're going to try and see if we can hammer that out. It was a big problem on the 74, I'm not going to lie. So we'll just see where it goes. Doesn't seem to be buzzing it so far. Okay, what I'm going to do next, and I probably am going to have to put a socket with a breaker bar on it on the other side of that bolt, see if I can get that bolt to turn. Okay, the head on that bolt on the other side is 5/8. So I've got a 5/8 socket and a breaker bar and a long pipe for leverage. Let's see if we can get some movement on it. Okay. Gonna use the pipe. I don't think that's turning at all. Unfortunately, impact sockets actually don't withstand the force you can put them on with a breaker bar very well. You're actually better off using a regular, I guess, a chrome steel sockets. Unfortunately, I don't have a 6-point and a 1/2-inch drive. So that kind of makes it tough because the socket is more likely to round off the edges of the bolt. Not that I care, since I'm probably going to replace it anyway, but I would like to just demonstrate getting these off. It's a crazy thing, but I have broken the chrome type sockets by using them on an impact wrench, and then I've also broken impact wrenches by using a breaker bar, but never broken a chrome alloy socket doing that. So you do kind of have to be a little bit careful. On what you're using. Like I said, I wish I had a 6-point socket here. I'm afraid this will slip off. I'm going to hit that bolt with some plaster because it's actually pretty rusted up on this side. And I guess I probably will have to try and squirt some in where the shims are, even though I'm doubtful it's actually going to get into where it needs to be to help me. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to shut off the camera, let that soak in a little bit while, and see if I can get to the same point on the other side, and see whether that's any better over there. So I'll be taking out the cotter pin, taking off the nut, and hitting it with some plaster. Okay, one tool I haven't brought out in this project yet is the fire wrench. Normally when you get a rusted on bolt, if you can heat it red hot, put the impact wrench on it, or even an air ratchet, it comes right off. Now, I don't know whether I can heat this well enough because I'm not going to go in there where the rubber is. I don't want to catch it on fire. What I'm going to try to do is heat both ends of it red hot, and hopefully that will give me enough heat on the inside so that it frees it up. Now, I won't be ponding on that on this side anyways while it's red hot, because that would just deform it. Trying to get some fine settings here on the thing. I'm going to heat this side first so that it cools off, so that it doesn't deform. I can never work these strikers right. Let me shut this off until I get it lit. I'm not in a good place as far as I haven't used it for a long time. I need to get the adjustments right. Okay, we have fire. See, the tip of that's red hot already. I do have a fire extinguisher. It's hard to get the hang of this when you haven't used it for a long time. I'm trying to do it rather gently. See, that's already red hot. Now I'll try to hit the other side. I don't know how hot that's going to get the inside of the bushing, whether it's really going to help to break that loose. Like I said, I'm trying to do this gently so that I get just enough heat in there to actually free it up. I'll try that from this side again, and from the other side one more time. Got to get it good and hot inside. So at some point in that process, my battery died in the camera. So I don't know how much of it I got, but I will tell you this, I heated both ends of that bolt up till they were red hot. And then I took the air hammer and nothing happened. I take that back. One thing, small thing happened. The pieces of the cotter pin that were in that bolt fell out. But we did not make any progress on getting these trailing arms out. So I'm going to try the big hammer. And I need to work on the other side to make sure, see if it's moving over there. Actually, it did move some. Maybe now that it's moved some, I can hit it with this. Popped out a good 1/4 of an inch on the other side. I'm hoping now that it's loose, maybe I can get a ratchet on it and turn it, and sometimes maybe these threads will catch on this and wind it out some. So I'm not going to video that because it's likely to be a long, boring process. But that's what I'm going to do now, and I will report back on success or failure. As I was under there turning that with the ratchet, I noticed that this trailing arm seems to be tilted top out. So I suspect that all that heating did was to melt the rubber bushing some, and that it's really not freed up from the sleeve that's inside it. It's just I've pushed maybe the bushing out a little bit. Well, maybe that's not entirely right either, because if the shims are holding it on the other side, maybe it did come out a little bit. But one thing's for certain, the bushing has melted some. Well, it doesn't look like we're going to have any success with ponding or turning or anything that. The best I could do is get about 3/8 of an inch of it sticking out on the other side at the head of the bolt. So what I did, surprisingly, this big cotter pin here, I was actually able to bend the 2 tabs on it with my fingers. That kind of surprised me. But as with the 74, I don't think that cotter pin's going to be a problem getting it out. Just use the handle of that hammer to get behind it and give me some leverage. So now what you're left with is, make sure that you can see that in the frame. Now that what you're left with is the shims for alignment. And what I did the last time was I just took a chisel and I tapped them up. Kind of hard left-handed because I'm not so good left-handed. What I'm doing is I'm creating myself some space so I can get a sawzall in there to cut that bolt on both sides, and then the trailing arm will come out. Unfortunately, my sawzall is up at the house, so if I go back up to the house, I'm probably going to be done for the day. But I can get maybe both of these started. Now I can see hopefully you can see that. I can see the hole that the cotter pin went through. And it's not helping me much. So those things are wedged in there tight. I guess I'm going to have to try to grab them with some vice grips and see if I can get some leverage on them and pull them out. Hopefully they didn't use 1968 shims in here, because 1968 shims had a hole for the cotter pin and a hole for the bolt. And if they did that, as opposed to 76, actually 69 I think and up, the shims have a slot in the end, so they should be able to slip in and out. But I'm going to go grab a pair of vice grips and see if I can get them on there and yank that out. So I think I've made a little bit of progress. What I've done is taken a chisel and knock those shims up and down many times until I could get a set of vice grips on them. And basically I'm pulling and wiggling at the same time. Now that's only going to give me enough room once I get these out to actually what I'll be able to do then is get a sawzall blade in there to cut the bolt. And I'll have to do that on both sides. It's a lot of work. But I try not to pull too hard because I don't want to go flying when it comes out. There it is. Got some of them out. Now, that side, I didn't mean to drop those on the floor, but that side is free. Appears as though the other side might be free as well, but I'm going to have to get on the other side of it to work it, I believe. No. As soon as I got the one, the other one came. And now there's room in there that I can take a sawzall and cut off both of those bolts. Well, both of the bolts. It's one bolt. I'll need to cut it on both sides. But I don't have the sawzall with me here. I will just go ahead and bring that down the next time I come. In the meantime, I will work on that same method over here on the driver's side and get those out under the lift. I hope that's on the trailing arm in the pocket there. It's not. So, just to give you a little idea, just taking the hammer, knock them up and down. Now this one might be a little bit harder to get to because, recall, that one over there, I had the torch on it and maybe melted the rubber bushing a little bit. But I had a smaller chisel, was working a little bit better, but ultimately what happened is I was able to grab these like that and move them just with the vice grips. These are not loose enough yet, so they're going to require a number of repetitions of banging them up and down. So I got a couple of slightly sharper chisels that will make it a little bit easier to do that. But a point I wanted to make is when those shims come out, it's good to keep them on keep track of, driver's side, passenger side, and inside and outside of the trailing arm. Because you need to have a starting point for the shims you want to put in after you put the new trailing arm back on. And it's only a starting point. The reason I say it's only a starting point is because I'm going to change the bushing, so that's going to change things. But it'll get you kind of in the ballpark. But this right here is what I did. I knocked these things up and down for a long time until I got them to where I could put the vice grips on them and move them up and down by hand and tug on them. The longer you do this, the more it loosens up. The further you can move them, the better, up to a point, because you still have to be able to get that chisel in there to knock them in the other direction. I can feel these are loosening up now. Let's give it a go with the vice grips. Okay, they're starting to get it to where I can move them. And look at that, coming out. Okay, now I have to repeat that process on the inside of this trailing arm. I think I got them both out of the other side, but this one doesn't have as much play in it. It will have some more now that that's loose, but I'll be able to work those, and those should come out a lot easier on the inside. So I finally got all the shims out of both sides. The method I used was rocking them up and down, and then once I could get the vice grips to grip them, then I was able to rock them back and forth manually instead of using a hammer and a chisel. I am going to try one last time on each side to see if that made any difference with popping the bolt out. That moved the bolt out, but when it got to where the trailing arm moved over to where it was hitting, it's still frozen inside the trailing arm, inside that bushing. So I don't believe that that is going to come off without cutting it with a Sawzall. just for grins, I'm going to go around the other side and try that side. I suspect it'll do the same thing over here. It'll go in as far as the trailing arm. We'll let it move on the bushing. And then when it hits the bushing, it's going to be stopped because that's not free. And that's about it. Just as I suspected. So it's a new day, and I'm gonna cut those bolts that hold the trailing arm on. I brought my Sawzall with me, but in setting up to do this, what I want to do is I want to draw the bolt back this way. You recall I've pounded it that way quite a bit, and it's easier for me to draw that bolt back in by tightening this nut. Now the tip of that had mushroomed, but you recall that was a tip that was made for pounding on. So I had to very carefully use the cutoff tool to grind the tip off so that I could thread the nut on there. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with the manual tool, make sure it's working. I'm going to try to pull that. Okay, that's spinning on the other side. I've got to hold it. So what I'm doing is drawing that back so that I have room to cut on that other side, on the inside. It's not really that far. And then once that's cut, I can pound this side back in and give myself room to work over here. So you can already tell that I've got room to work over there. The bolt is not quite all the way drawn back. I recall that the trailing arm bushing is frozen to the bolt, so as I'm tightening this bolt, drawing it back, it's moving the entire trailing arm over. After probably drawn it about 1/2 inch, which is probably all it's going to go. Yep, it's up against the frame there. Now I didn't want to tighten that too much because I don't want to risk bending that pocket where the trailing arm fits. That's why I didn't use the impact wrench. So I'm going to pull this over as far as I can. And I'm going to put the bridge jack back under it to support it, because when it comes off, I really don't want it to fall. But I will set up the bridge jack to support it, and I will get the Sawzall ready and get ready to cut that off. So one of the things you want to be sure you do is make sure you're not going to have a blade long enough to hit the back of that pocket, because if it does, it'll bend it. Fortunately, the blade I have and the saw I have is perfect. It's a 6-inch blade, and I basically can put it all the way in, rest it on the bolt, and saw away. Move the light so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, making good progress. I probably shouldn't have taken it out of there because now I'm out of the groove. There's the first cut. It's going to take, as I said, 2 cuts on each bolt, or each trailing arm, I should say, because now I've got to get around on the other side. So I've come around to the outside, and what I'm going to try to do, I've taken the nut off of the bolt. What I'm going to try to do is hold this thing vertical as best I can. Theoretically, lining it up with the bolt head that I've cut off on the other side, and hopefully, as I pound this through, it will knock that out. Tough to hold that. Let's try the big hammer. I don't have to worry now about mushrooming that bolt. As long as it can be forced through that hole, it's good. Trying to get this lined up so I can get a good cut on it. And I did punch that out on the other side. So this one might be a little more challenging to get the saw in because of the brake drum, etc. here. But if I can't get it in there, I'm pretty sure that I could move this way, cut the bolt off here, and then just push this in, and it'll give me clearance, I think, to cut it off, or to get it out, I should say. There, I think I've got it supported well enough on the bridge jack that I can get the saw in there. We'll see. I'm a little concerned about when that breaks off if this is going to fall off though. I think I want to support that a little better somehow. Okay, that's supported a lot better. It doesn't look like it's going to roll off when it comes free. So now I can grab the Sawzall and start cutting the second bolt. I've already cut the one on the inside, on the other side. That's not going to do because that's sitting on the bushing. That's actually what I've done is I've pushed it too far. And now that bolt is stuck out, so I didn't give myself any clearance in there. Trying to get myself clearance for the wrench, and I'm sorry, for the Sawzall, and I didn't give myself any room to get the blade in. There, I knocked it over. Might be a little awkward getting this in here. Yeah, there's room to hit the blade now. Room to hit the bolt, I'm sorry, not the blade, the bolt. Doggone rotor's in the way here. Be nice if they'd give you a slot to put the blade through on the back side of that thing. I'm going to shut the camera off till I figure out the angle I need. It appears the way I have to go here is from the bottom, pushing up on the saw. Dang, flies bothering me. I can smell rubber, so I'm not sure I'm on the bolt properly. I was, and I am so close to getting it through. I shouldn't have given up so easily. can find that groove again. I keep giving up too soon. Now I've got two cuts almost all the way through. Drop my lathe. Don't know if I need it for the video. It's tough to hold that up there. Need to go get the light. Okay, I didn't have it recording. I did do some more cutting. I got it in from the top here, and eventually I got this piece of the bolt cut off. So now it's loose in there, but it's heavy. I'm tired. I'm having a hard time lifting it because of the angle it's at. So I'm going to lower the bridge jack and see if it comes off easy from there. Make some room for me to put it down whenever I get it off. Okay, again, I got to use both hands on the bridge jack. I hope the trailing arm doesn't fall. Try that and see if that helped. The bridge jack the rest of the way down now. Make that a bit easier to handle. sucker's pretty heavy. So that's one off, and I've already got one cut on the bolt on the other side. That bushing there on the end, I have a press, 12-ton from Harbor Freight. I'll be able to press that out. I have to do a little bit of research into what I need to do for that though before we tackle that job. Okay, that's it for the trailing arm. Unless I find something new and exciting on the other side, I'm not going to video it. Whoops, I guess there's going to be some editing done there because I left the camera running, pointing at the other trailing arm. But after switching blades, because they were dulling, and experimenting with different heights, I got it cut halfway through from the bottom. Then, ironically, I raised it up and I had room to come in from the top. So I don't know how that worked out, but it did. And I was able to cut the rest of the way through the bolt from the top. So trailing arms are out. One thing I forgot to mention, last night when I went up to the house, I was telling my wife about how little I had got done yesterday. And she was asking about, well, what are you going to do since you had to cut them off, or we're going to cut them off? And I said, you know, you can buy them as replacement parts. And I actually looked at my spreadsheet, and I actually had those bolts and bushings, polyurethane bushings as well, already on the list of things to buy. So the fact that I had to cut them off, it doesn't bother me, but it does illustrate what a problem these things can be to deal with. So the only thing I have left on the frame is, and I'm not going to video these, I'm pointing to the wrong side. I got it focused on the driver's side and I'm pointing to the passenger side. These bumper pads for bottoming out, there's one bolt holding those in on the back end. There's one, and there's one on the front end. So those two things are the only two things, well, four, two on each side, are the only things left on the frame other than bolts where I put them back in so I know where they go. And I guess I'm ready to either start taking apart the trailing arms or taking the rest off the frame. So I'm thinking maybe rust off of the frame. We'll see what I feel like doing the next time I come down. As usual, thanks for watching and bearing with me. These were a struggle, and I knew they were going to be a struggle before I even started them because they were rusted, and I figured the bushing was rusted to the bolt. That makes for a difficult removal. So enjoy your day. Thanks for watching.